Our movie today opens with Jack, our protagonist, waking up from a terrible nightmare, and he stumbles to the front door and we catch a glimpse of these two huge scars on his upper back. And he answers the knock, and it's apparently his landlord, an old lady who's come to collect rent. And Jack retrieves a massive briefcase in his room, which contains stacks of both old and new money, and an antique pistol, and a black and white photograph. And he hands over the rent money, and he takes some for himself, and then he asks the date, indicating that he's been holed up in the apartment for a while now. And later that day, he goes to the local church to play bingo, and he meets up with Jeremy. And Jeremy is this young intern at a hospital. And Jack hands him some money, and he asks him to retrieve a package from his house, which he stashes in the fridge. And as he returns home, a nervous teenage girl appears at his door, and she starts staring at him, and then she runs away. And Jack feels a little confused, and he just closes the door and he lies down to rest. But two men break into his apartment and they question him about Jeremy. And one of the men pulls out a gun, but Jack disarms him with ease and he fights back. And they actually shoot him in the right arm and also pepper spray him, but he managed to take both of them out. And after he beat up the intruders, he cleans his wounds and he goes to a local diner for a meal. And he there encounters Kate, a waitress who seems to be enamored with him. And later that night, he receives a call from his ex-girlfriend, Jillian, and she accuses him of saying something to her daughter, Andrea, causing her to go out to get drunk. And Jack confirms Andrea's whereabouts and he goes out to find her. And she was apparently at this bar, and the bartender at the bar tells him that she left with a man called Tim Dell. And Jack uses the phone directory to track down Tim's apartment, and there he finds Andrea, and after a little intimidation, Tim lets her go. And after Jack makes sure that she's okay, they go to this diner. And Jack is curious about Andrea, and he checks her back to see if she has scars just like him. But he doesn't actually find anything. And Andrea then asks Jack if she can stay over at his place for a few days, and he gives her a sigh in approval. And as the sun rises, Jack wakes up from yet another nightmare, and he removes the bandages on his hand to find that his hand has completely healed. And seeking some distraction, he goes to a diner to order some tea, but his peace is disrupted by an old man who appears out of thin air and just stares at him. And he starts feeling a little uneasy, cause who likes it when an old man just appears out of nowhere and stares at them? I mean, not me. And because he was feeling really uneasy, he leaves the diner and the old man disappears as he leaves. And later that day, Jack witnesses the two men that he had encountered earlier, you know, the ones that maced him and shot him, and he sees that they actually kidnapped his friend Jeremy. And he hijacks the mailman's van and he follows them and finds himself in a building where Jeremy's being tortured. And in a fit of rage, Jack frees his friend and he beats up the men before escaping with the package that Jeremy had in his car. And when he gets home, he places the package in the fridge before dropping off Jeremy at the ambulance. And that night, Jack takes Andrea to a bingo game at the church, and Andrea expresses her opinion that bingo is actually a waste of time. I kind of agree here. But Jack disagrees and explains that he plays to keep himself occupied. And after the game, they head to the same diner where they encounter a bald, menacing man, and this man distracts them and he poisons Jack's water, but they're unaware of this because they were, distracted. And as they leave the diner, Jack notices the old man from earlier staring at him. And Andrea sees him too, and she asks Jack if he knows him. And Jack warns her to stay away from this old man, and they head back to his apartment, and Jack starts to feel unwell. And when they arrive, he hears some men arguing outside, and when he looks out of the blinds, he sees the men that he beat up earlier, and they're with this bald guy. And the poison finally takes its toll and Jack collapses in front of them. And they wrap his body in chains and they head to the docks to dispose of his body. But before they can do so, Jack wakes up and he grabs the bald man and they both plunge into the water. And the other two men flee the scene and Jack chases them down and he kills one of them and he eats him. He actually rips out his throat and he eats his throat. The other guy just runs away. And back at his apartment, Jack demands that Andrea leave because he's concerned for her safety, because he's kind of losing control of his cannibalistic side. Apparently Jack is a cannibal. Yeah, who saw that coming? Not me, but yeah, apparently this dude is a cannibal. And when he tells her to leave, Andrea becomes very upset and she storms out. And Jack manages to fight off his urge to feed on human flesh. And later that night, Jack witnesses an argument between the landlord and one of the tenants, a loud and obnoxious man. And Jack confronts the man and kills him, and he feeds on him and he disposes of what's left of his body. And the next morning, Jack attends another bingo game, hoping to distract himself from his very disgusting urge. But when that fails, he goes to a bar to get get drunk, and despite his frustration, Jack decides not to break his streak of abstinence from alcohol, and he leaves the bar in a fit of rage. And as he exits the bar, his bloodthirst finally takes over, and he spots two men smoking outside, and he decides to give himself a reason to kill them. And so, to test them, he drops a $100 bill in front of them and he walks away. But one of the men picks it up and he hands it to him, and Jack starts to feel a little conflicted about killing these people because now, this guy's probably a nice guy, he didn't take the money, come on. And meanwhile, the creepy old man is watching Jack from a moving car. And Jack walks a few blocks and he approaches a group of men. And he bumps into the first guy, hoping to get a rise out of him, but the man apologizes. And Jack, now weakened by the minute, finds himself nauseous and he starts to vomit. And all of a sudden, 3 teenage punks begin to harass him, and Jack realizes that there's a man with them, like an older man. And Jack quickly approaches him before the man reaches for his gun, and Jack kills him and he eats him. We don't actually see him eating him, but it's implied that he actually killed and ate him. And apparently the man shot him before Jack ate him, and after Jack got home, he was attempting to pry out the bullet with a kitchen knife, while his recorder plays a message from a French gangster who claims to have kidnapped Andrea and killed her mother. And the gangster tells Jack to meet him at the docks or else he'll kill Andrea next. And later that night, Jack retrieves a blood pack from the fridge and he drinks it before heading to the docks. But nobody's there except for the old man. And Jack then goes to the hideout of one of the city's crime bosses to request for a meeting. And he meets Alex, the son who was taken over since his father's murder, and Jack asks him if he's responsible for Andrea's kidnapping. But Alex denies any involvement and claims to be a different man from his father. And that evening, Jack returns to the diner to find the manager murdered. And he walks into an adjacent section where multiple gang members have been waiting for him. And Kara, a waitress, quietly asks for his help, and Jack walks into the bathroom followed by a gang member, but shortly after a little bit, only Jack walks out, implying that he killed and ate him. Yeah. And after he got out, he asks Kara for a ride back home. And as they leave, one of the gangsters shoots Jack point blank in the head, but Jack remains unfazed and he slowly rises up and he kills all of them except for the man whose eyes he gouged out earlier. And he takes the man to interrogate him back at his place. And when Kara refuses to drive him, he promises her $1 million if she does, at which point she reluctantly agrees. Cause who would say no to $1 million? I mean, come on. And at Jack's place, she shows Kara all the money in his briefcase and other items including a 150-year-old bottle of wine and a picture of him in the French military during World War I. And he tells her that his name is Cain, as the Cain who's mentioned in the Bible, the brother of Abel, this guy with the rock, yeah, him. And he is the son of a fallen angel, a Nephilim, hence the scars on his back where his wings were cut off. And Kara becomes overwhelmed and Jack leaves the room to tie up the one-eyed gangster in the bathroom. And Jack then finds out that the gangster is just a hired goon who doesn't know anything, and when he finds this out, he just lets him go. And in the kitchen, the French guy was apparently waiting for him, and he forces Jack outside at gunpoint. But Jack easily kills him, and he tells Kara to take as much money as she wants and leave. And Jack visits Jeremy at the hospital and learns that he was involved with the gang after he took a loan to pay off his student debt, but he couldn't pay back his debt. And Jeremy eventually remembers that Alex was the boss, and Jack goes to Kara again for another favor, and this time he wants her to drive him to Alex's compound. And while driving, Jack asks Kara to take care of his daughter as she has nobody else. And then Jack approaches the compound and he knocks out one of the guards and breaks in, and then he takes a shotgun blast to the abdomen, but he manages to wipe out every goon and he makes his way to Alex's office. And while he was pounding Alex, Jack hears someone crying from behind the bookshelf, and he drops the shelf, revealing a hidden door that leads to the bathroom. And once inside, Jack finds Andrea tied up and a video camera recording her, and she's in a very horrible condition, and she's unable to open either of her eyes and she's drained of energy. And Jack carries her outside and he hands her over to Kara, who he tells to take to the hospital. Jack then goes back inside and he breaks Alex's ankle, and then he picks up his phone and he makes a call to tell his friends to come to the compound. And his plan is to draw and kill all of the criminals that want to get him. And then he takes a seat and he asks Alex why he thought he could kill him. And Alex explains that their plan wasn't to kill him, but to actually hurt his daughter. And they were going to beat her and film it and mail the video to him anonymously. And when he hears this, Jack kicks Alex down into the bar and he throws him onto the pool table. And it's revealed that Alex discovered that he had a daughter around the same time that Jack did. kid. Apparently, Andrea is also his daughter. Yeah. And since Alex found out that Jack is the one who killed his dad, he just wanted revenge. And since he knew that he couldn't kill Jack, he decided to go with the second best thing. He just wanted to kill his daughter, Andrea. And Jack tells him that he killed his father, Tom, only because he wanted to stay under the radar, and Tom didn't really want that. He had other plans for Jack. And that's why Jack basically killed him. And then Jack drags Alex onto a counter, and he tells him that up until the point he had sent his goons after him, he managed to stave off his hunger for flesh and instead resorted to just drinking human blood from the hospital. But now he had reawakened his cannibalistic side, and Jack is going to eat him alive. And just then the old man appears once more, and Jack becomes enraged, and he asks him why he only showed up now when he's killing a pathetic low-life criminal. And he begins to recount all the bloodshed he had caused over his lifetime, and how he had murdered thousands when he was Ramses of Egypt, and impaled so many innocent people when he was Vlad the Impaler in Romania, and all those times the old man did nothing, but now he's apparently here. And the old man is actually Death, by the way, just so you guys know that, yeah. And Jack did all of those horrible things so that Death would intervene and take him because he was so sick of being alive. But instead, Death mocked him by just watching, and eventually leading Jack to believe that he's suffering a life of immortality for committing the first act of murder against his brother Abel. And just as he demands that the old man let him die, Kara runs in and asks him to help her get Andrea into the car. And Death disappears that moment she enters the room. And Jack decides to help her, and before he leaves, he tells Alex that one day he'll see the old man. And on the last scene, Jack leaves the room and the old man materializes next to Alex, and he hears his monstrous and eerie voice greeting him as the movie comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave a like, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment. Anyways, I hope to see you guys on my next recap. I love you all so much. Bye.